which is what benefits could we see from a fantastic Agile adoption?
I think one thing that ties both of these together a little bit for me is, having an actual clear goal as to what we're trying to achieve with an Agile adoption, is something really, I think, necessary for successful adoption. I did a talk at the London Scrum Gathering in 2007. It was. It's been quite a while now, and I just noticed on SlideShare it seems to be the most popular slide deck I've actually done. But, the first anti-pattern I talk about, because the whole title of it was "Kicking Scrum Butt."
Yep.
And the title had two T's actually. But the first anti-patterns I talk about were goalless, soulless Scrum. Not really having a goal in terms of what performance characteristics or what outcome you're trying to achieve through Agile adoption. And I think there's too many organizations who have a very either a superficial view of it was like cheaper, faster, or when you go and talk to them, and this is the first questions I ask as a coach or consultant coming in, why are you doing this? Do we have kind of any awareness or desire of why it is we're embarking on this sort of change? And in some organizations it seems to be a very mixed set of ideas that aren't particularly coherent, or there's no really clear messaging that people can kind of unify around and sort of see how we're progressing towards achieving certain characteristics. And even I think it's a really powerful question to think about, what is it we're trying to optimize our organization?
How many times do you get the answer, well, look, what we were doing right now doesn't work. We've heard this other way is faster, so we're going to try this now. Yeah,
that's a classic, isn't it? Faster. But I think it can be a good place to start the conversation in terms of the the awareness and desire, pieces of change around what are our pain points, what have we experienced in recent projects and recent relationships with the business and various things that we think could be improved. And 9 times out of 10 those things, funnily enough, in the Agile lean community, we've actually got some good ways forward on those things.
I think a lot of especially large organizations generally have value statements and mission statements that actually can quite often help with this discussion. So for example, organizations that have values listed like or most conveniently agility, but when it's not that, efficiency or customer focus or a number of these values, actually they're great drivers and good reasons for doing this over what their existing structures and processes propose or encourage. And I think, as you were saying the other day, Rowan, about Craig Larman talking about optimizing organizations as a whole and asking the senior management what it is they're actually trying to achieve with Agile adoptions, trying to then align or looking at their existing organizational structures and saying, well, okay, these are the processes you've got and the strategies you've got in place, yet these are the values you're espousing as an organization, and the two don't line up. So what is it that we can do to correct that? And many of those will quite likely to find that the various Agile principles align to, and therefore we can drive Agile adoption from there.
It's worth mentioning that, because I've worked with that alignment to missions and visions for a long time, pre-Agile, that it's still possible to get a successful Agile adoption at a software project delivery level and still not have alignment to your missions and values. That's it's still something that the business needs to manage as part of just being a business. It's possible to have these fantastically run Agile software delivery projects that still are not delivering against where you said as an organization at that executive summary level, where you said you wanted to be or where you said you wanted to go. So I suppose I'm just trying to paint the picture that, again, Agile's not that silver bullet.
It depends what you're trying to marry it up to, I suppose. It's if the value you're trying to espouse as an organization is, I don't know, cost saving or no, bad example perhaps, but although the thing is, I don't actually believe that there's going to be many value statements from organizations that have them that don't align to Agile principles. I mean, fundamentally, they're all about efficiency and customer focus and value for the organization and for the employees and for the customers. There's not going to be many successful businesses that don't have those.
No, exactly. It's the problem, the misalignment is where you have, yes, we want to focus on customer needs, and then at project delivery, the name of the project or the goal of the project isn't actually customer delivery focused, or it's not customer focused.
So misalignment between what they're trying to achieve from a project standpoint, what projects they're coming up with versus their
project's run in an agile way successfully, but the goal of the project isn't aligned to what the mission said that we were going to try and achieve.
So
I see
doing the
that
wrong projects fundamentally.
Yes, doing the wrong projects. Yes.
Yeah, I think you can have the two different sort of worlds and two different sort of optimization focuses between the project level, just get this project delivered, versus at an organizational level, where do we want to be a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, in terms of the performance characteristics of overall delivery of new initiatives, right? And that's a whole different ballgame, and that's, I think, where some agile adoptions don't even get to that conversation or to that bigger picture than just this one project and then on to the next project, and no one's really kind of taken that to the bigger picture, whole of org kind of consideration of how can we kind of build this to make the whole thing flow a whole lot better end to end and build better relationships.
That's quite hard to achieve that because that's effectively a local optimization over the kind of the optimization of the whole, the organization as a whole, and it's very difficult to achieve that, I believe, in especially when you've got organizations where the business itself is hierarchical, when you've got independent business units that have their own goals and their own managers and their own their own reasons and raison d'etre, and they're not necessarily all communicating with each other and coming up with that shared pipeline of work. And
so to answer the question, actually, which was what are the fantastic or the benefits of a fantastic agile adoption, we've kind of been talking about this separation that's occurred, misalignment, because the business is so separate from IT, and these guys down here have tried agile, but these guys are. When we try to have that agile adoption that starts to bring positive customer engagement, where the business and IT actually start to work more closely together, that starts to build that bridge between the two, and then those conversations about the strategic alignment can really start to gain momentum, and the business can start to understand, oh, hang on a minute, I think we're doing the wrong projects. Whereas previously they weren't talking because they weren't doing that positive stakeholder engagement. And for me, my favorite benefit from Agile is that stakeholder engagement, seeing the stakeholder on a regular basis and getting that interactive feedback from them, and seeing the smiles on their faces when, wait a minute, here's some software. I don't usually see software for 6 to 9 months.
Yes. Yeah, and getting the virtuous cycle going, isn't it? And a reinforcing loop in the right direction. And I think a lot of, this sort of area, getting beyond the one project or the local optimizations is, really that space that systems thinking is really there to help us with. And I was just having a conversation at the end of a course yesterday where, there's a disconnect really in the kind of experience that people were having within delivery teams with the executives who, had a belief that they could push and more stuff down the pipe, even though these teams, already had more than enough and basically changed direction at any moment in time, even though they hadn't finished up what they were, working on and things.
Are you talking about the word no? Are you talking about the bad no word?
There's that, yeah. And I mean, there's just different mental models, I think, going on with people in the organization, right? We're not all on the same page about how this system called the organization actually functions when these things occur. So, doing things like cause and effect diagramming, and really kind of talking at it, talking through it and really seeing if we can come to the same understanding of what's going on currently in the organization can be a great place for figuring out, are we in a vicious cycle here? Are we pushing more stuff into teams and therefore teams have more defects, and that adds more pressure to them, and it's actually a reinforcing loop, and because there's been a bad relationship between business and development, then there's more pressure on the CIO, and the CIO puts more pressure on the teams, and the teams get bogged down, and then it goes back to reinforcing that whole thing again.
But you said this Agile thing was going to be better.
Yeah. And I think that expectations thing is really important too, isn't it? That the business is not a silver bullet, like we're saying, but there are ways to actually get the organization functioning better, but you do need to understand how the organization actually functions before you intervene and mess things up.
Then,
Ray, what's your favorite benefit?
Favorite benefit?
What's the one you like to see?
I like an ecstatic customer. I like somebody that comes back to the organization and goes, this is brilliant. This is exactly what I wanted, to get some positive feedback. Even if the feedback is great, I'd like to see this as well.
But that's even better feedback, though, isn't it?
Yeah,
then they've learned something.
Yeah, and at that point, it feels like the system's grown. It's not just the system of the organization; it's the system including the customers, and the customers are also helping optimize the organization as a whole around them, which is what we're trying to achieve in the first place. So I guess the number one benefit for me is a happy public. But that's.
What about trust? I come up against trust a lot in the organizations that I work with, where there's mistrust because of existing as is business process. And when we start to implement an agile transformation, we start to see the collaboration between not just the business and the IT, but also between the team members themselves. And then those other parts of the organization, such as DevOps and enterprise architects, where previously there was we've got to work with the architects. It's a black hole. We won't see any work come out of there for weeks. But all of a sudden, now that we're working with them much more closely, there's a much better relationship growing there. And they start visiting each other's areas on a much more regular basis, and they may even start going out for social drinks with them or something like that. I like to see that benefit of growing
the employee satisfaction and the engagement.
Absolutely. I mean, I think I read once, as people, we feel most happiness when we feel like we're in charge of our lives and directly related to the amount of human contact we'd had during the day. And so the more people you have in contact with you and you have an interaction with, the better you feel. And I think I see that a lot when I observe agile teams when I'm coaching. Mm-hmm. I see the high level of interaction versus the non-agile part of the organization that are still just emailing the person who sits opposite them.
And they're connecting people more directly. So when you talk about delighting the customer or anything, creating a static customer, right? It really helps if the teams creating the value, creating the product for the customer actually feel a sense of closeness and intimacy, and can empathize with the customer and really understand what's going on in their lives when they use the product and things like that. And that is often requires this intermediating, removing a whole lot of people and roles and processes that were in between those people doing the product development and creating the value themselves and the actual customer, because often you've got all these different people doing specifications or doing customer support or account management or whatever it is in between, and that the developers haven't actually met anyone who actually uses the product or come really as close as they could. And you put more love into it, right? If you know who these people are and you care about it.